Hello friends, my name is Bintou and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be all about the Kindles. So I've been getting a lot of comments on my last Kindle video, which is a review of, or an updated review of the Kindle Oasis, particularly because this new Paperwhite came out in towards the end of 2020. And I picked one up during the Black Friday sale it was. So that was back in November and it's currently January. So I've had the chance to read like 2 books on this device and to play around with it and kind of think about what it's like, the experience here versus my Kindle Oasis. And so for this video, what I want to focus on is the differences between these 2 devices and then thinking about recommending a device in the year 2022, which is where we find ourselves right now. And thinking, first of all, if you already have the Oasis, is it kind of worth upgrading / downgrading to the Paperwhite? And then if you were going to buy a new one today, which one is kind of the best value, which one's worth it? So let's begin with this new Paperwhite. So this is the brand new, again, 2021 version of the Kindle Paperwhite. This is not the signature version. The signature version wasn't for me, and I can talk about that a little bit later. Definitely just the regular one has everything that I could possibly need. The most important specs that this has that the previous generation did not is, first of all, the screen size. So this has a 6.8 inch, so basically nearly 7-inch screen, which is the same size, the 7-inch on the Kindle Oasis here. And that screen size definitely makes a big difference. When I think about this versus some of the older Kindle Paperwhites that I saw in stores, you're gonna love the bigger screen on this device. Generally speaking, I think that the small screens are not as fun to read on when you're reading on an ink device, and so the bigger they can make it, the better, within reason, obviously, but yeah. The next thing that this has that the previous one did not is the warm light. So the warm light is a feature that was on the Oasis that once again trickled down to the Paperwhite. And they did that with quite a bit here. I would say a lot of the premium features of the Oasis trickled down here. I love the warm light on the Oasis, and I'm super glad that they brought it to the Paperwhite so more people can enjoy it. I think that once you play with the warm light and you start using it, it's really hard to go back to not having it. It really is quite nice. Third, they brought USB-C charging to this device, which none of the other Kindles have, not the Oasis and not the old Paperwhite. So just the new Kindle Paperwhites have the USB-C, and USB-C is definitely kind of the trend toward the future, and it's really, really convenient. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I think about it, basically all of my devices except my iPhone and my AirPods are USB-C devices. So I have a USB-C charger just lying around basically everywhere. So it's so easy for me to charge this compared to the Oasis, which is, I think it's like micro USB. And I have to fish that out every time I need to charge the device, which luckily the battery is super nice, so that's not really that often, but still, being able to use just a standard connection charger that pretty much every single device uses today is very convenient. And I think that it doesn't seem like it would be a big deal before you get it, but it really is. And last but not least, this device has actually the same exact resolution as the Oasis, which is about 300 ppi. And I mean, reading on this thing is just as crisp and just as pleasant as reading on the Oasis. So that's kind of a quick intro to what you get with this new Paperwhite. I want to say that both of these devices, while I have them here, and really any of the Kindles that are currently available for sale, they all accomplish the same task, which is reading a book in a very convenient manner, which is digitally. They are all very portable, and they all run the same software. There are just a couple differences, and I'll talk about one of them, but pretty much you're getting the same reading experience when you get into the Paperwhite signature and then the Oasis, with some very minor differences. And so that's what the rest of this video is gonna focus on, sort of the differences between these two. And in the end, I'm gonna talk about whether the differences are worth it and which one I would recommend. So first, let's talk about some of the physical differences between these 2 devices. The shape is the first one. So this one is very square, the Oasis, whereas this one is a bit more rectangular. And so that's why, even though the screen sizes are so similar, 6.8 versus 7-inch, they feel different because this one is just more elongated and more rectangular, and this one is more square shaped. Which one you prefer is probably gonna be personal preference. I kind of like the square shape over the elongated shape, but that's very minor, and again, that's basically a personal preference thing. The next physical difference between these two is the page turn buttons. So you'll find that the Oasis actually does have page turn buttons. You don't see that on the Paperwhite. I really like the page turn buttons. So that's one of the reasons why I opted for the Oasis when I first got this. At this point, nearly 2 years ago, actually. Once again, this is a personal preference. And I'll go ahead and give my personal preference here. I really, really like the page turn buttons. And if I had the choice to add page turns to this, I would. I find that they're super convenient and I just like the option of using them. And I tend to use them. When I read on this device, I will use the page turn buttons more so than just pressing to advance or tapping to advance for sure. Now, while I'm on the topic of these page turn buttons, the question then would be, would I, if I were buying a new device today, would I pay the extra? I think it's like over $100 for this, just for the page turn buttons. I have to say I probably would not. Not today, based on everything that this guide brings to the table, because it is just so great. The next thing, the ergonomic design that you see on the Oasis versus the regular Paperwhite. So you'll notice that this one allows you to hold it in one hand a lot easier. And the page turn buttons aid in that. So I find that my Oasis is very comfortable to hold in one hand. Very easy to turn the page with the buttons as well while I'm holding it in one hand. And I really have no complaints. With the Paperwhite, I was using this. I read my first book on this as it is, and I didn't enjoy holding it in one hand as much for a couple of reasons. First, it just wasn't as comfortable, and I think I just wasn't used to it. But the other thing is, for some reason, they put the power button on the bottom of the device. And so if you're like lying down and reading and it presses against your chest, it turns the device off in the middle of your page, which is kind of annoying. I don't know why they did that, but that is a thing. The power button is at the bottom. Now, a bunch of people recommended I get a pop socket, and I did. And I will say that the pop socket solves the discomfort that I had holding this device in one hand. Someone told me the placement matters. They were right. The placement of the pop socket does matter. But adding that simple thing, and I got one that is related to reading, just one more chapter there. Adding that in does make this much more comfortable to hold in one hand. So that solves, I guess, the advantage that this one had, other than the fact that now you have something jutting out of the back of the device. That being said, the backing on this provides a lot more grip than the aluminum backing on the Oasis. So if you get the pop socket, you're probably gonna actually enjoy holding this in one hand much better than maybe the Oasis. And that really does bring me to the last big physical difference between these two devices is the metal design versus the plastic design. I would say that this is another personal preference thing, right? The metal is a bit more sophisticated, do I want to say? It feels more premium, that's the thing. This feels like a more premium device because of the metal compared to the plastic, particularly because this does hold fingerprints very obviously, which is not always nice. I don't feel the need to put a case on this. I do usually have a case on my Kindle Oasis that I just took off for filming. And that is because really the metal back makes this, again, like I said earlier, not as easy to hold on to, whereas the plastic back on this does provide more grip. And it just feels sturdier in a way that this one doesn't. This feels a little bit more delicate. And so that's why I do put a case on this, but not this. I have not put a case on this at all. All right, so quick summary. Those are all of the big physical differences between these two devices. The screen size, the rectangular versus the square shape, the plastic versus the metal backing, the page turn buttons versus the not page turn buttons, the ergonomic design versus the not ergonomic design / get yourself a pop socket. And then at the start when I was talking about this device, I already talked about the USB-C on here versus this is just a micro USB. So the few remaining things that I want to discuss are more in the actual reading part related / software-ish. The first thing I'll talk about is the warm lights. So they both have warm light. This device the Oasis has adjustable warm light, whereas this does not. That being said, of course, you can get the signature edition for a bit more that does have the adjustable warm light. For me, I actually don't use the adjustable warm light. I have it on this device and I never use it. I actually prefer to just adjust the warm light myself or do the adjustable lighting myself and set it and forget it. And that works for me. My reading environment doesn't change that often. And even if it does, I just prefer to control that myself. I personally don't think the adjustable warm light is worth it for me. And again, this is a personal preference. Some people really, really love that adjustable warm light and they will shell out the extra cash to get the signature edition that does have that adjustable warm light. I don't care. So it's not worth it to me. So I don't think it's a con that this doesn't have an adjustable warm light. But again, that is a decision for you to make. The other difference is that this Oasis actually has more lights than this one does. So 17 LED lights versus 25 LED lights. To me, that didn't really make much of a huge difference in the reading. The lighting on this device will tend to be more even as a result of having more light, and obviously it'll just be a little bit brighter as well. I don't ever need to turn my brightness that high, so it hasn't been an issue for me. But just so that you're aware, that is another difference between these two devices. Battery life. So this actually is worth mentioning. The battery life on the Paperwhites, I think, have always been better than the battery life on the Oasis devices. And I think most people would agree with that. That tends to be most people's experience. That coupled with the fact that, again, this does come with a USB-C charger, which is way more convenient to charge, makes this, I think, the absolute winner if your main consideration is battery. This takes the cake for sure. And then the last thing I'll mention that is somewhat software related is this device has an option to turn on these page turn animations. I guess that's new with this Kindle, but for some reason that software is not available on the Oasis even if you update it. So I guess that's exclusive to this. I actually really liked that animation. It's not a huge deal breaker, but if you have it, you should try it. It's actually pretty neat. It's another way of kind of ensuring that your page changed or being aware that your page changed without turning on page refresh, which tends to drain the battery a little bit more. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of that, but you should try it. Give it a shot. If you don't like it, you can just turn it back off. All right, and that brings me to the end of this video, kind of my final thoughts on these two devices. Would I give up my Oasis, for the Paperwhite? As it stands, I actually do not think that I would. I think that I would rather wait and see if Amazon decides to update the Oasis in this new year and what they decide to bring to it, because they would have to bring quite a lot. They'd have to go pretty hard to beat what they have done for the Paperwhite. Either that or they're probably just going to get rid of this entirely, which would kind of suck, but I would understand that. However, I think that if you do not have a Kindle device and you decided that you're going to get one this year, maybe you have a new resolution to read more books, the new Kindle Paperwhite is definitely the device to get. This would be what I would recommend for sure. It has a lot of the really great features that the Kindle Oasis has for like half the price. Actually, if you wait for a sale, it's more than half the price because I got this on Black Friday and it was $100 basically. And the Oasis retails for $2 something. So, I mean, you really can't beat that value for this device. Even when it's not on sale, it is a pretty good value. But like definitely wait for the sale. Yeah, and I feel very strongly saying that. Now, let's say you're in a position like me where you have the Oasis, and I've seen videos of people who already have the Oasis and are comparing it to their Paperwhites, and some people have even kind of downgraded or upgraded. I don't know what you would call it at this point. For me personally, I don't think that it is worth the switch. I actually think that I would hold on to my Oasis. Overall, because I already have this device, I think that I still prefer the reading experience on here than on the Paperwhite. But again, that's because I already have this device. If I were buying brand new, I would go with the Paperwhite, just like I said earlier. All right, folks, that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any other questions about these devices, just let me know in the comment section and I will reply to as many of them as I can. In the meantime, as always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.